Dayna Nuhn is the editor of The Snarkologist, and she is a flat Alice collector, which means all that wonderful paper ephemera. She's got a ton of it. She did a presentation for us about her Valentines, if you ever want to go to YouTube and take a look at that. I'm going to ask her to unmute. Dayna, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hi, everybody. And thanks, Heather, for the opportunity to share my thoughts and others' thoughts on the great and small puppy, because it is actually great and small.
I know there's a Q&A there, and usually you submit questions. We want some answers today. We want to know what's going on with this Alice in Wonderland puppy. So we encourage you, if you have your own theories, to go ahead and put them in the Q&A, and we'll look at them at the end. All right, Dayna, take it away. Dayna and Michael, I should mention, thank you for being here, Michael, as well.
So I just want to start. If I had been Lewis Carroll's editor, I would have strongly advised him to remove the section about the puppy. The episode adds nothing to the narrative. In fact, it's jarring and disrupts the flow of the story. It's also inconsistent with Carroll's dream logic because the puppy is the only animal in Wonderland who isn't anthropomorphic. I recently told two non-Carrollian friends I was giving a talk on the puppy from Wonderland, and they both replied, "What puppy? I don't remember a puppy." And that pretty much sums up my argument right there. I've been wondering about the puppy and the purpose of it for a long time, and today is my chance to finally ask, why did Carroll include the puppy when there are good reasons not to? To begin, it's quite clear that Lewis Carroll would not have agreed with me to nix the puppy. When he expanded Alice's Adventures Underground to become Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, he made many changes, adding scenes and characters. However, he kept the puppy episode virtually intact. I think to get any ideas about the puppy's purpose, you need to look at all 4 of the Alice books. So let's start chronologically with Underground and Wonderland. I will be reading aloud the text from Alice's Adventures Underground, and the screen will show you the text from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, so you can compare the 2 versions sort of side by side. For those of you who may have forgotten, Alice has just left the White Rabbit's house. And while she was peering anxiously among the trees round her, a little sharp bark just over her head made her look up in a great hurry. An enormous puppy was looking down at her with large round eyes and feebly stretching out one paw, trying to reach her. "Poor thing," said Alice in a coaxing tone, and she tried hard to whistle to it, but she was terribly alarmed all the while at the thought that it might be hungry, in which case it would probably devour her in spite of all her coaxing. Hardly knowing what she did, she picked up a little bit of stick and held it out to the puppy, whereupon the puppy jumped into the air off all its feet at once, and with a yelp of delight rushed at the stick and made believe to worry it. Then Alice dodged behind a great thistle to keep herself from being run over, and the moment she appeared at the other side, the puppy made another dart at the stick and tumbled head over heels in its hurry to get hold. Then Alice, thinking it was very likely having a game of play with a cart horse and expecting every moment to be trampled under its feet, ran round the thistle again. Then the puppy began a series of short charges at the stick, running a very little way forwards each time and a long way back, and barking hoarsely all the while, till at last it sat down a good way off panting, with its tongue hanging out of its mouth and its great eyes half shut. This seemed to Alice a good opportunity for making her escape. She set off at once and ran till the puppy's bark sounded quite faint in the distance, until she was quite tired and out of breath. "And yet, what a dear little puppy it was," said Alice, as she leant against a buttercup to rest herself and fanned herself with her hat. "I should have liked teaching it tricks if I'd only been the right size to do it." As you can see, aside from some punctuation and minor word changes, the 2 passages are almost identical. The main difference between them is that Wonderland changes the reference to Alice fanning herself with a hat to a leaf. Let's take a moment to look at the underground illustrations. Christ Church Library in Oxford has Carroll's preliminary drawing for the scene. It's less detailed than the one in the manuscript, especially the fur. The puppy is more on an angle, but still sitting, and the curved tail is included, together with a more prominent collar and tongue. Barely visible on the left, there is a faint outline of Alice drawn in pencil. In this early version, her hair appears shorter and her right hand is reaching out. to the puppy instead of down at her side as shown in the final drawing. And as an aside, the hat reference in the text is odd, since Carroll does not show Alice holding or wearing a hat in any of the underground illustrations. Now to compare Carroll's picture with Tenniel's. Often Tenniel took Carroll's drawings and made them more professional, but these two pictures are quite different. Carroll's more static illustration shows Alice and the puppy closer in size. It's a friendlier puppy, perhaps wanting to shake a paw. Tenniel's has more action with a friskier puppy and a timid Alice holding the stick, hiding behind the thistle. Tenniel emphasizes the size difference more, and the dog is a different breed. There's also a preliminary pencil drawing by Tenniel of the puppy illustration. It's part of the Carroll collection at the Surrey History Center in Woking. As Matt DeMacos noted in his 2020 Night Letter article, Sketch, Trace, Draw, Part 1, Tenniel left the puppy and Alice virtually the same and only changed the background vegetation. We'll continue on with Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, published in 1871. Carroll included this curious passage in Chapter 3, where Alice is thinking about entering the wood where things have no names. I wonder what'll become of my name when I go in. I shouldn't like to lose it at all because they'd have to give me another, and it would be almost certain to be an ugly one. But then the fun would be trying to find the creature that had got my old name. That's just like the advertisements, you know, when people lose dogs. Answers to the name of Dash, had on a brass collar. Just fancy calling everyone you met Alice till one of them answered, only they wouldn't answer at all if they were wise. Why did Carroll choose the name Dash for this lost dog? I asked because in 1890 he published The Nursery Alice. This version, aimed at children 5 and under, is much shorter than Wonderland, and it seems to me that this would be the ideal opportunity to finally let the puppy go, but no. Instead, Carroll doubles down and gives the puppy its own expanded chapter. Chapter 6, The Dear Little Puppy. Well, it doesn't look such a very little puppy, does it? But then you see Alice had grown very small indeed, and that's what makes the puppy look so large. When Alice had eaten one of those little magic cakes that she found in the White Rabbit's house, it made her get quite small directly, so that she could get out the door, or else she could never have got out of the house again. Wouldn't that have been a pity? Because then she wouldn't have dreamed all the other curious things that we're going to read about. So it really was a little puppy, you see. And isn't it a little pet? And look at the way it's barking at the little stick that Alice is holding out for it. You can see she was a little afraid of it all the time, because she got behind that great thistle for fear it should run over her. And that would have been just about as bad for her as it would have been for you to be run over by a wagon and 4 horses. Have you got a little pet puppy at your home? If you have, I hope you're always kind to it and give it nice things to eat. Once upon a time, I knew some little children about as big as you, and they had a little pet dog of their own, and it was called Dash, and this is what they told me about its birthday treat. Do you know, one day we remembered it was Dash's birthday that day, so we said, let's give Dash a nice birthday treat, like what we have on our birthdays. So we thought and we thought, now what is it we like best of all on our birthdays? And we thought and we thought, and at last we all called out together, why, it's oatmeal porridge, of course. So of course we thought Dash would be quite sure to like it very much too. So we went to the cook and we got her to make a saucer full of nice oatmeal porridge. And then we called Dash into the house and we said, now Dash, you're going to have your birthday treat. We expected Dash would jump for joy, but it didn't one bit. So we put the saucer down before it and said, now Dash, don't be greedy. Eat it nicely like a good dog. So Dash just tasted it with the tip of its tongue, and then it made, oh, such a horrid face. And then, do you know, it did hate it so, it wouldn't eat a bit more of it. So we had to put it all down its throat with a spoon. I wonder if Alice will give this little puppy some porridge. I don't think she can, because she hasn't got any with her, and I can't see any saucer in the picture. It continues into the beginning of Chapter 7, The Blue Caterpillar. Would you like to know what happened to Alice after she had got away from the puppy? It was far too large an animal, you know, for her to play with. I don't suppose you would much enjoy playing with the young hippopotamus, would you? You would always be expecting to be crushed as flat as a pancake under its great heavy feet, so Alice was very glad to run away while it wasn't looking. Carroll makes it clear that Dash in this story is a different dog than the Wonderland puppy, and there doesn't seem to be any obvious connection between Looking Glass Dash and Nursery Dash other than the name. The books are about 19 years apart, so it seems unlikely, but it is an intriguing coincidence. Tenniel reworked his original illustration of the puppy for the nursery Alice by updating Alice's dress, making the silhouette narrower and adding bows. Alice's dress evolution is well covered in Fashioning Alice by Kira Vaklovic, and all the pictures were printed in color for the nursery Alice. It's written in a chatty, conversational style. Carroll muses about the problems of having so many legs like a caterpillar. He explains what a witness is, or gives a history lesson on foxgloves, and also makes numerous references to the illustrations. But this is the only spot where he tells a story, one that apparently happened to some unidentified children that he knew. Many things have been cut out of this version, such as all the poetry in the scene with the pigeon. Other scenes, such as the Mad Tea Party, have been shortened, and still others, like the griffin and the mock turtle, were severely pared down, and yet he chose to expand the space given to the puppy. The addition of Dash's story is even more jarring to the narrative flow here than it was in the original episode. So what's up with the pup? Why is the puppy in the book at all? And why did Carroll expand the episode by including the story about Dash? Underground Wonderland and Looking Glass are all dedicated to Alice Little. Did the Underground Wonderland puppy mean anything to Alice and her sisters? Of course, it's possible, but we do know that she had cats that were included in the books. In 1932, when Alice visited New York for the celebration of the centenary of Carroll's birth, reporters asked her who her favorite Wonderland character was. She did not say the puppy. Instead, she replied the Cheshire Cat. However, the nursery Alice was dedicated to Marie Vandergoot. Carroll met Marie in July of 1885, a quite charming child aged 11, he wrote in his diary. She was one of 7 children. Could the story about Dash and the birthday porridge be one that Marie told to Carroll, and he included it to make the book more relevant to her? But what have various commentators written about the puppy? The answer is not very much. This part of the book gets little attention, and most writers only looked at Wonderland instead of all 4 Alice books. However, this first commentary manages to combine Dash with the puppy. Queen Victoria's Alice in Wonderland, also known as Queen Victoria's Secret Diaries, published in 1984, theorizes that Victoria, after the death of Prince Albert, wrote Wonderland and Looking Glass to deal with her grief and make her life as queen more bearable. She convinced Carroll to pretend he was the author. Victoria hoped that the books would be deciphered in the future and her story finally known. The book's annotators claim to have done just that. Here are their main comments about the puppy as it relates to Queen Victoria's life. In order to find the identity of the puppy, one must skip to chapter 3 of Through the Looking Glass for the quote therein. That's just like the advertisements, you know, when people lose dogs. Answers to the name of Dash, had on a brass collar. Victoria's beloved dog Dash, who lived from 1830 to 1840, was a favorite companion for the young and lonely princess, which is why the Wonderland puppy is portrayed so very large, to indicate how large a role he played in her life at that time. Dash was a King Charles Spaniel. The dog pictured in the book was a terrier. This was Victoria's way of indicating that, as in most of Wonderland, she doesn't have things down quite right. A terrier is a much livelier dog than a spaniel, and this was a hint that her impulsive nature needed to be subdued a great deal before she could properly take on the role of queen. This hint is reinforced by the rounding of the 2 top corners of the puppy illustration, which shows how her sharp corners needed to be rounded. Otherwise, she would remain with many sharp edges, just like the pictured thistle. The annotators really strive to cover all the bases with their analysis of the puppy episode. It was a logical choice for them to tie the puppy to Dash, helped, of course, by the passage in Through the Looking Glass. Their reference to the rounding of the top corners of the illustration is interesting because the original picture has square corners. In a 1986 article in Jabberwocky written by Selwyn Goodacre and Malcolm Trott, they note that the 1869 Wonderland edition from the American publisher Lee and Shepherd had, among several other differences, rounded top corners on the puppy illustration. Also, Tenniel's and the Daziel brothers' signatures were removed. I found that some other early pirated American editions also have this adapted picture. I haven't found any explanation for these changes. As the rounded corners seem to be in American editions, it appears the annotators made a bit of a slip up in trying to relate that item to Victoria's life. Their theory doesn't take into account the existence of Alice's adventures underground or Alice Little's well-documented role as Muse. However, if you can believe, before breakfast or after, that Queen Victoria wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, then the mystery of the puppy is solved. I couldn't, so I continued to search, starting with Martin Gardner's annotated Alice. The original version, published in 1960, has no footnote about the puppy. In More Annotated Alice, published in 1990, there's no footnote about the Wonderland puppy. However, in the Through the Looking Glass section, we find footnote number 9. Queen Victoria, Charles Lovett informed me, owned a spaniel named Dash that was well known in England. The Queen was often photographed and painted with Dash at her side or on her lap. The annotated Alice, the definitive edition from 2000, is the first to mention the Wonderland puppy. Many commentators have felt that this puppy is out of place in Wonderland, as if it had wandered into Alice's dream from the real world. Dennis Crutch has observed that it is the only important creature in Wonderland who does not speak to Alice. The annotated Alice 150th Anniversary Deluxe Edition, published in 2015, adds 2 pieces of information to the earlier footnote. First, Bernard Patton in The Logic of Alice, Clear Thinking in Wonderland, 2009, adds that the puppy is the only character, apart from Alice, who is not in the least mad, and, as rendered by Tenniel, it appears to be a Norfolk Terrier. We did a bit of an investigation into the puppy's breed, and while the Norfolk Terrier does seem to have a good resemblance to Tenniel's drawing, it didn't exist as a breed in 1865. They appear to have been bred starting in the 1880s. However, paintings we have found from the mid-1800s show other unnamed terriers, which closely resemble both Tenniel's and Carroll's drawings. Calling it a terrier is as close as we can safely come. The dogs shown in these paintings were known as rabbiting dogs because they burrowed into rabbit holes. So perhaps the best explanation for the puppy's presence in the book is that one of these dogs who burrowed into the wrong rabbit hole ended up in Wonderland. Moving on to other commentators, David Day in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland Decoded in 2015 wrote, Carroll took considerable notice of the dispute over Darwin's 1859 publication of On the Origin of Species. It has been suggested that the enormous puppy was meant to be Charles Darwin. The puppy, in Carroll's mind, but not that of his illustrator John Tenniel, may have been a beagle and consequently could have been an allusion both to Darwin's ship the Beagle and to his book The Voyage of the Beagle, a copy of which was owned by Carroll. Day's alternative suggestion is that the enormous puppy was meant to be Thomas Huxley, who, as a quintessential defender of the theory of evolution, became known as Darwin's bulldog. Peter Hunt, in The Making of Lewis Carroll's Alice and the Invention of Wonderland, 2020, came to similar conclusions as David Day, but takes it even further in his commentary on the puppy, summarized here. Charles Dodson attended the June 30th, 1860 meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science at the Oxford Museum, which turned into a debate on evolution. While Hunt calls Carroll's illustration an all-purpose puppy, he notes that Tenniel was a political cartoonist. Because of this fact, Hunt thinks that Tenniel may have given the puppy a familiar face, perhaps that of a young Charles Darwin. Hunt asks, could the rest of the dog be a beagle, then a rather differently shaped dog from the present breed? Or contrariwise, is the puppy possibly meant to be Thomas Huxley, known as Darwin's bulldog? Hunt goes on to comment about Alice taking refuge behind the thistle, which is surely not a coincidence. Perhaps it represents William Turner Thistleton Dyer, a colleague of Dodson, who studied math at Christ Church and later moved on to the natural sciences. Thistleton was not a Darwinist at that point, so he, represented by the thistle, could protect Alice from the bouncy Darwin-Huxley puppy. Day and Hunt have some interesting ideas, but we know from Carroll's illustration in Underground that he did not see the puppy as a beagle or a bulldog, and he didn't have Tenniel draw the puppy as either of those breeds. Next, we look at Selwyn Goodacre's Elucidating Alice from 2015. He writes in the introduction to Chapter 4 that the meeting with the puppy is a beautifully dramatic contrast with the immediately preceding one, where Alice is huge and the rest are small. Here she is small and the puppy huge. He further comments that the enormous puppy is only enormous from Alice's point of view. Goodacre also references The Philosopher's Alice, notes by Peter Heath, 1974, footnote 9. Apart from the White Knight's horse, the puppy is about the only creature in either narrative which behaves entirely naturally, that is, as his nature would lead one to expect. Presumably, it is too young to do otherwise. Goodacre adds that this might explain why the normal behaving puppy is a normal size. He notes that dear little puppy and poor little thing are ironic comments, and Alice is reacting to it being a puppy, not its actual size. She cannot help seeing it for what it is, a pet for little girls to play with, but at the same time, she's also afraid of it trampling her or eating her up. We'll finish our look at commentators with a brief mention of the puppy found in Dennis Crutch's article, Alice for the Little Ones, in Jabberwocky, autumn 1975. Carroll introduced so much in the Nursery Alice that is new and special. An anecdote about a puppy called Dash, perhaps the same Dash that Mr. Sibley pointed out to me. Alice speaks about in the wood where things have no names. Dash, in fact. So we have some interesting thoughts about the puppy from a variety of sources. I feel that the Queen Victoria and the Darwin suggestions lack substance, and some of the others suffer from not looking at all the Alice books together. I've shared some of my thoughts about the puppy along the way, but after all this research, the puppy is still a mystery to me, and I'm left with more questions than answers. Is there a reason Carroll included the puppy in the story? Why did Carroll expand the episode for the Nursery Alice, and who is Dash and his mysterious owners? Does the particular breed drawn by Carroll or Tenniel have any significance? And why are there rounded corners on the puppy illustration in some of the early American editions? Normally at this point, I would ask if there are any questions, but I'm going to go looking glass style and open this up for your thoughts and theories about the puppy. And I know that Heather is also interested in the puppy and has written about it. And maybe, Heather, you would like to start us off.
Oh, I'm sure no one wants to know what little me thinks.
I
Okay, I'll
do.
tell you. And by the way, everyone, if I were at home, my husband would have been screaming from the next room that Heather, your camera's on. So I'm sorry I left my camera on during your talk, Dana. Don't worry that that will not show up on the YouTube video later. That'll be edited out, me wandering around the room here while you were speaking. So the Alice in Wonderland puppy. Now in the Pool of Tears chapter, Alice scares the bejesus out of the mouse by telling him that there's a lovely terrier that lives nearby that is such a good mouser. So key thing, terrier, right? And then later on, really what the whole, and my notes are at home, I apologize, but it all hinges on the very last page of the book, right? When Alice's sister is saying that the noises of the barnyard are what influenced Alice's dream. Now, most of those were quiet, and in the distance, it's the tinkling of the sheep bells becomes the clang, clang, clang of the teacups. Now, clearly, oh, and by the way, it's a terrier, as we mentioned, right? The Tenniel dog, we all agree is a terrier. So clearly, well, I don't know if we all agree, just talked about a whole bunch of people who don't agree, but clearly the dog who lives nearby ran right by Alice, barking his head off. And it was much louder than anything else in the dream. And that's why that big old puppy came out of nowhere and started interacting with Alice. And that's why it was so brief. He kept going. So that is my theory. It's the terrier that lived down the road.
I like your theory.
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts or anything refuting it?
No, it kind of ties into the it kind of ties into the puppy, the rabbiting dogs falling down the hole and ending up in Wonderland, and that it being the only normal thing. Um, it is a dream.
Mhm.
So
And actually,
it breaks the dream logic of the whole book.
mhm, mhm. When you said that the white knight's horse is the only other animal that acts like an animal, I never thought of him before. So now I have to amend it. I always say the puppy's the only thing in the books that
It's
isn't
the,
anthropomorphic, but it's
it's
not
the
true.
only thing in Wonderland that's
True.
not anthropomorphic.
That's a good point. All right, so I can still say that. All right. So we've got we've got a theory from Brittany Allen, who just spoke a little while ago. The encounter with the puppy depicts Alice in an uncomfortable position of being preyed upon, much like the upon by Dinah. Although Alice tried coaxing the puppy as she would in her ordinary world, she is in Wonderland and must adapt to the environment she is in. What do you think of that? Alice's prey.
Um, she is prey, really. She's afraid that it's going to gobble her up. She's just really hopes that it's not hungry. And I'm actually surprised that she tried to play with it because it must have been far more scary than cute to her.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she describes it like as big as a cart horse, right? Oh my heavens. I wonder uh, if anyone else has any thoughts on the puppy. Why, Charlie Lovett, as I
Hey,
live and breathe.
hey,
What are you doing here?
can I read you a quote from Lewis Carroll?
You may.
This is Lewis Carroll. If by opening your columns to this subject, you can lead the way to heavier dog tax, to the diminution of dog shows, or to any humane expedient for reducing the plague of dogs, you will have done a good deed. Your obedient servant, Lewis Carroll. There you go.
Was he just kidding? Like when he calls all little boys fat little monsters or whatever he called them?
Well, this was in response to a letter to the editor about stray dogs running all over London and causing trouble, and But
Gotcha. Thank you for that. Actually, either Charlie or Dana, do either of you know Mark Burstein is wondering, is there anything in the diaries that deal with Carol's feelings about dogs? Was he fond of them? Question mark.
there's
Scared.
certainly I can't remember if it's in the diaries or the letters, but there's an account of him visiting a friend, and their dog has gone rabid, and they have to kill the dog. He has to, and it's kind of horrifying, but
That is, yeah. Ooh, we've got one more question here, again for both Dana and Charlie. For symmetry with the Cheshire Cat, was a dog needed? Did Carol like cats better than dogs? Is that why the dog is silent, or I guess doesn't speak English?
well, the mouse is, she intimidates the mouse by talking about both cats and dogs. So there's sort of, even before she meets either the cat or the dog, there has been a symmetry of cats and dogs established in that sequence.
Dana, any thoughts on that symmetry with Ches?
When I talk to people, a lot of people go, puppy, but wasn't Lewis Carroll a cat person? And when you think about all those letters he wrote about when he's standing outside the school and he hands each little girl a kitten as they leave the school, and the letter he wrote to Isa Bowman about cats and gloves, and the Cheshire Cat and the kittens in Through the Looking Glass. And I know there's the take away a bone from a dog and what's left, the riddle from the White Queen and the Red Queen. But um, I personally think of Lewis Carroll as more of a cat person than a dog person. But
He
that's
did
just
take a very, very adorable photo of a dog snuggling with a little boy. I forget who the boy was, but that would suggest, I mean, how could a dog hater take that? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to, for our final question, it's not a question, it's an answer. I'm going to actually screen share because I'm sure if I try to read this out loud, I'm going to butcher it. But Matt Demakos, who is, of course, very, very knowledgeable on Tenniel illustrations, he gives us an answer about the rounded corners of the puppy. I guess I should read it out loud, shouldn't I? I can answer the rounded corners in the puppy illustration, but it's a bit complex. To knock off an engraving, the Americans put a special liquid on a print Then they turned it over and rubbed it on a block. At this point, they can make changes, wood, etc. And so they made rounded corners. Why? Not sure. Maybe a little clue to themselves that the work was theirs. So when it was cut, it was line for line the same, except for any changes specifically made. All right.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Matt.
And
One mystery solved.
And thank you, Dayna. I really enjoyed that talk, and I know everyone did. I was looking at the comments, and I don't, boy, everyone's throwing them in at the last minute here. Sorry. Didn't the Dodson family have a pet dog? Do we know if the Littles had any pets? I don't.
I think it was Wilfred had a pet dog, and Carol took a picture of that. And if you look online, if you Google Lewis Carroll and dogs, that picture will come up and it'll say it's Lewis Carroll's dog. I don't know.
The
So
internet also often thinks Wilfred is Charles Dodson.
so his brother had a dog. It's a nice looking dog. I don't know if Alice's family had dogs. I would assume when she got married and moved to Lyndhurst, like Cuffnells, I assume there'd be dogs. Reggie was a hunting guy, and
By then, yeah, for sure.
I would assume there would have been dogs around Cuffnells, but I don't know about the Littles having dogs.
It was certainly, there was a certain pet cat that I just found out about recently, and this may be a segue into what we're going to talk about next, but the common room, of which Lewis Carroll was curator, had a pet cat named Tommy. And if you want to know more about Tommy, you can have to come to Winston-Salem in November. So
Here we go. What a great segue. So Dayna, thank you once again, and please feel free to stick around here while Charlie tells us about the in-person conference this fall.
So I'm not sure what I just said, but my screen says, it sounds like you might have switched to a different language. So I apologize if it sounds like I'm speaking in a different language. I'm going to try to speak in English all the way through this. Well, just want to invite everyone to come here to Winston-Salem in November of 2025 for our in-person meeting for this year. We're trying to emphasize the word society in the Lewis Carroll Society of North Carolina by having lots of opportunities for society. The schedule, I'm gonna read the schedule as it is now. It is subject to change, but this will give you an idea of the kind of things we're going to be doing, and this will be up online pretty soon, along with a list of suggested hotels and some other arrangements. But we hope to begin the events. We want to give you lots of things to do, so come early if you can. And if you do come early, on Thursday night, we're trying to do a screening of Dream Child at our local independent cinema. That would be followed by a panel discussion, hopefully with some people from the North Carolina School of the Arts Film School, and possibly somebody from the River Run International Film Festival, possibly Dayna, if we can lure her down here, because she knows a lot about Alice's visit to New York City in 1932. So that'll be Thursday night, November 6th. Friday morning, we'll have the Schaefer reading. And then Friday afternoon is going to be a lot of fun. I hope you can get here for a Friday afternoon, because we have been invited by the Croquet Society at the Arbor Acres Retirement Home. They have two like professional quality croquet greens, and they've invited us to come and play croquet with them. So they're going to teach us a little bit about the game. Everybody's going to get a chance to play, and that's where you're going to get the first of the amazing handouts that we're working on. You're going to have more handouts than you've ever seen at this meeting. So that handout is, well, I'm not going to tell you what it is. We're going to seal all, you're going to get 4 separate printed booklets that are going to be sealed in envelopes, and you're not allowed to open them until certain parts of the meeting. So you'll be surprised by what they are. So I'm not going to tell you what they are. Then Friday evening at Bookmarks, which is our local nonprofit independent bookstore. Bookmarks is our great literary nonprofit here in Winston-Salem that'll also help us run the Schaefer reading. We're going to have a panel discussion with, I'm hoping, a bookseller, an academic, I've got those lined up already, and hopefully a children's book writer, about the ways in which Alice in Wonderland is still influencing the children's book world today. And following that, we're hoping across the street that we will be having a concert of music provided by Matt DeMacos, that is the original music from the 1886 Savile Clark play as it was performed at the Prince of Wales Theatre. A lot of this music has not been heard for over 100 years, so this will be the first public performance in more than a century of that music. Then Saturday morning, let me get to Saturday morning. That begins our main meeting. Matt will talk about the music when he talks about selections from the Alice operetta score, how he discovered the score, and he'll be playing some more excerpts from that. Then it's going to be a morning of Matts. So Matt Demakos is going to speak. Then Matt Johnson, who has done all of the restoration work on My Rare Books, is going to come and talk about restoring rare books, you know, when to get a book repaired, when to get it rebound, how he does it. He's going to bring lots of show and tell. So that should be a lot of fun. Then we're going to have Claire Imholtz talking for a few minutes in discussion about her new book about the Savile Clark letters. Matt Crandall is going to end up the morning with a talk about the art of Disney's Alice in Wonderland. And he's going to talk about some of the artists that you maybe haven't heard before. That's going to be, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. It's just almost the 75th anniversary of that film. Then we will have a boxed lunch. In the afternoon, we're going to have a panel discussion with 3 teachers, one from elementary school, one from middle school, and one from high school, all of whom have recently staged productions of Alice. And they're going to talk about how their students reacted to that material, how their audiences reacted, how they chose the material. One of them I had lunch with today. He actually wrote the Alice show with music. He's going to perform a song for us probably. Usually you can't keep him away from a piano, so that'll be great. Then I'm going to be giving a talk on Lewis Carroll's minor illustrators. We all know about Tenniel and Henry Holiday and Harry Furness and Arthur Frost and Gertrude Thompson, but there's another sextet of illustrators that I'm going to be talking about that you may not have heard about, and there's some great stories there. Then we're going to have a break for cake and Madeira. Now, why are we having a break for cake and Madeira in the middle of the afternoon? Well, because this is going to be followed by a meeting of the Christ Church Common Room, and they always had cake and Madeira. I have combed the archives at Christ Church through all this material related to Dodgson's curation of the Common Room, and put some things together in about a 20 or 25-minute little playlet. And we're going to have some fantastic actors. Matt Crandall is going to be one of our actors. We're going to have some local actors. We have some guy from Canada who works in the motion picture industry who's going to be one of our actors. Somebody named Andy. Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to give you an idea of what a meeting of the Common Room was actually like. Then we will adjourn. You will have an opportunity to have dinner on your own at one of the many, many fine restaurants that are within walking distance of your hotel. Saturday evening, you'll come to this house, the one right behind me, at 7 p.m. or so. We'll have a dessert buffet. I think we're going to have a local cookbook writer who just published a book on cocktails to design a designer Alice cocktail for us for that party. And I will have, because it's the 100th in-person meeting of the Lewis Carroll Society, the exhibit here will be called 100 Books, 100 Stories. I'm just working on the catalog for that. It's going to be about a 120-page illustrated catalog, so you'll have that to take home with you. And then Sunday morning, Stephanie and her mother Vale have invited us over to their house for brunch to finish off the weekend. Vale also is going to be at our house on Saturday night, playing on the piano some early Alice sheet music that you probably all have in our collections, but we've never heard. Your registration fee will include all the events I just mentioned: breakfast and lunch on Saturday, brunch on Sunday, dessert Saturday night, 4 special keepsake booklets, the 120-page exhibition catalog. Cheshire Cat Press is doing a very special keepsake for us, which I could tell you what it's going to be, but that would take away all the fun, and other various commemorative items. So I think it's going to be a really fun weekend, and you're going to have a lot of fun swag to take home with you. So I hope everybody will come and join us and enjoy some Southern hospitality.
That sounds fantastic. And I apologize, I left my camera on once again. I didn't know we were going to get such granular detail. I'm so happy to hear all of that. Yeah, well, I'm in.
That's all subject to change, but I don't think there's going to be much change. There's still a few things we don't know about, but I think most of that will be, most of that is confirmed. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so all. And there's Dash now behind you.
And yeah, and Rosie will be here to greet you. Theo will be here. So Ryan, please bring your toddler because we'll have one here too. So